Have you ever wondered what history's greatest figures would say if they met face to face? This is the place where they step out of the shadows of myth and into an imagined conversation in the afterlife. Here, there are no barriers of time. Welcome to History's Afterlife. In this episode, two women whose images have outlived their flesh encounter each other for the first time. First, Cleopatra VII, who ruled Egypt from 51 to 30 BCE, the last pharaoh of a dynasty that had governed for 3 centuries. Far from the seductress of Hollywood films, she was a brilliant polyglot who spoke 9 languages, a skilled diplomat who preserved Egyptian independence against Roman expansion for nearly 2 decades, and a patron of learning who made Alexandria the intellectual capital of the ancient world. When she died by suicide at 39, she took with her the last vestige of pharaonic Egypt. Second, Norma Jean Baker, known to the world as Marilyn Monroe, perhaps the most recognisable woman of the 20th century. Born into poverty and abandonment in 1926, she transformed herself into a global icon of beauty and sexuality, starring in films like Some Like It Hot and The 7-Year Itch. Behind the platinum hair and breathless voice was an intelligent woman who read voraciously, studied method acting, and yearned to be taken seriously. Her death by overdose at 36 sparked conspiracy theories that persist today. Both understood that survival meant performance, but at what cost? Now, the last pharaoh meets the ultimate movie star.
You're staring.
I'm sorry. You're not what I expected. The coins, the statues, they always made you look so stern.
Propaganda has a way of reshaping truth, doesn't it? A queen with soft features wouldn't command respect from Roman senators.
Roman coins minted during Cleopatra's reign depicted her with what were then considered masculine features: a hooked nose, strong jaw, designed to project authority in a world where female rulers were seen as anomalies.
I suspect you also understand the gap between image and reality.
More than I care to admit. Though your propaganda lasted 2,000 years. Mine barely made it past the 60s.
What matters is the mythology we leave behind. Tell me, did you choose your image, or did it choose you?
Both, I think. At first, I created Marilyn to survive. Norma Jean was nobody, unwanted. But Marilyn, she could make men stop breathing just by walking into a room.
And the power in that? Was it real?
Real enough to topple governments, apparently. Jack Kennedy, you know.
Monroe's alleged affair with President Kennedy created such concern among his advisors that they reportedly viewed her as a security risk. By summer 1962, Kennedy's inner circle feared the scandal could destroy his presidency if revealed.
Though I suppose sleeping with powerful men is nothing new for either of us.
Is that what they say about me? That I seduced my way to power?
Julius Caesar, Mark Antony. The history books make it sound very romantic.
History books written by men who couldn't fathom that a woman might wield power through intellect rather than sexuality. Yes, I took Caesar and Antony as lovers, but I spoke to Caesar in Latin about philosophy and to Antony in Greek about military strategy. I was educated in mathematics, rhetoric, and statecraft. My seduction was of their minds, not merely their bodies.
Cleopatra was the first Ptolemaic ruler in 3 centuries to learn Egyptian, in addition to her native Greek. She was trained in mathematics, philosophy, rhetoric, and dialectics, skills that made her as formidable in negotiations as any Roman general.
You used what worked. We both did.
You speak as if you had a choice. Did you?
I told myself I did. Every morning, I put on my Marilyn armor. The walk, the voice. It was all calculated. But somewhere along the way, I couldn't find Norma Jean anymore. It was like she'd been consumed.
Monroe once said, "I never wanted to be Marilyn, it just happened. Marilyn's like a veil I wear over Norma Jean." But when does protection become prison?
I know that feeling. Do you know what my name means? Glory of her father. Even my identity was borrowed from a man, but I made it mine. I was a reincarnation of Isis, the living goddess. When I sailed to meet Antony, I dressed as Aphrodite, turned my barge into a floating temple. Theatre, yes, but theatre with purpose.
In 41 BCE, Cleopatra arrived to meet Mark Antony on a golden barge with purple sails and silver oars. She was dressed as Aphrodite, surrounded by children costumed as cupids, a calculated spectacle that reportedly left Antony speechless.
Purpose. My purpose was to be desired by everyone and loved by no one.
That's not true, surely. You had husbands.
Joe DiMaggio wanted a housewife, not a movie star. Arthur Miller wanted a muse, not a woman with opinions. And Jack wanted discretion I couldn't give him. None of them wanted me. They wanted their version of me.
Monroe's 3 marriages, to James Doherty at 16, baseball legend Joe DiMaggio, and playwright Arthur Miller, each collapsed under the weight of her public persona. Her alleged affair with President Kennedy remained one of Hollywood's most whispered secrets.
I had 4 children. Caesarean with Julius, twins with Antony, another son. When Octavian defeated us, he killed Caesarean because the boy's very existence was a threat. My other children lived, but only because they could never claim Egypt. Sometimes I wonder if I loved them, or if they were simply strategic assets.
At least you had them. I kept trying, kept losing. The pills the doctors gave me, they said it was for my nerves. But I think they made everything worse. The miscarriages, the fog. Some mornings I couldn't tell if I was Marilyn playing Norma Jean or Norma Jean playing Marilyn.
The physicians gave me powders too. For my skin, they said. To keep me beautiful. We poisoned ourselves in service of our images, didn't we?
How many women throughout history have believed what they were told would preserve their value, only to discover it was slowly destroying them?
I just wanted to matter. Not as a symbol or a fantasy, but as a person. I studied at the Actors Studio, you know. I read Dostoevsky, Joyce, but all anyone saw was the platinum hair and the wiggle.
Despite her public image, Monroe was a voracious reader who owned over 400 books. She studied method acting with Lee Strasberg at the prestigious Actors Studio, desperate to be taken seriously as a performer rather than dismissed as mere eye candy.
You did matter. Your image became eternal. Surely that's something.
Eternal emptiness, maybe. They turned me into a symbol of sexuality without ever asking if I wanted to be sexual. Half the time I was so nervous I could barely function. The camera loved me, but I never learned to love myself.
At least your empire was your own body. Mine was actual land, actual people. When I lost, they suffered. When Octavian's forces closed in, I tested poisons on my servants to find the quickest death. Not very noble, was it?
You were protecting your people from torture.
Was I? Or was I too proud to face public humiliation? The great queen paraded through Rome in chains.
Rather than face capture by Octavian's forces in 30 BCE, Cleopatra died by snakebite, though some historians believe it was poison. She tested various methods of suicide on condemned prisoners to find the least painful death.
Do you know what my greatest regret is?
Tell me.
That I let Rome define me. Egyptian, but educated in Alexandria's Greek traditions, speaking Latin to Caesar, performing Aphrodite for Antony. I spoke 9 languages, but I'm not sure any of them were my own voice.
The Roman historian Dio Cassius wrote that Cleopatra was brilliant to look upon and to listen to. Yet perhaps brilliance, when performed for others' approval, loses something essential in translation.
I never learned who I was when the cameras stopped rolling.
And yet here we are, still performing. Even in death, even here, I suspect we're both being more dramatic than necessary.
Maybe. But for the first time, I feel like I'm performing for myself. Not for men, not for audiences, just trying to understand.
The luxury we never had in life, too busy surviving, too busy maintaining the illusion of power.
Do you think it was worth it?
I preserved Egyptian independence for nearly 2 decades against the greatest military power in the world. Literature, astronomy, medicine flourished under my rule. The Library of Alexandria reached its final glory during my reign.
Under Cleopatra's rule, Alexandria remained the intellectual capital of the ancient world. The famous library housed over 400,000 scrolls, and her court attracted the greatest scholars, mathematicians, and physicians of the age.
That sounds like a yes.
And you? You became the most recognizable woman in history. Decades after your death, your image still sells magazines, still defines beauty for millions.
That sounds like deflection.
Perhaps we're both asking the wrong question. Not whether it was worth it, but whether we had any choice.
You think we didn't?
I think we were both born into circumstances that demanded performance. You, to escape poverty and abandonment. Me, to save a kingdom. The tragedy isn't that we performed, it's that we never learned to stop.
Is there a difference between choosing a mask and having one chosen for you? And once worn long enough, does the distinction matter?
Even when we were alone?
Especially when we were alone. The most dangerous audience is ourselves.
I used to dream about disappearing. Just walking away from Marilyn Monroe and becoming someone ordinary. Working in a bookstore maybe. Reading poetry in the evenings.
Monroe often spoke privately of wanting to escape Hollywood. She dreamed of moving to Connecticut, teaching acting, or simply living quietly with her books, a fantasy that seemed increasingly impossible as her fame grew.
I dreamed of sailing beyond the Mediterranean, past the Pillars of Hercules, into unknown waters. Just my ship, my books, and the horizon.
Do you think there's a version of us somewhere that made those choices?
Perhaps. But then we wouldn't be us, would we? The women who chose duty, who chose performance, who chose to carry the weight of other people's fantasies.
Heavy crowns, invisible chains.
The price of being unforgettable.
Monroe's friend, the photographer Milton Green, once observed her ability to turn on her persona at will. But what happens when you can no longer turn it off?
Can I tell you something? You're the first person, the first woman who understands, who knows what it's like to be...
Simultaneously everything and nothing?
Yes, exactly that.
Then perhaps this conversation is what we both needed. Not to justify our choices, but to finally stop performing them.
To just be?
To just be.
Can I ask you something? Do you ever wonder if we were cowards? The way we gave up pieces of ourselves to survive. You could have abdicated, fled to India or beyond. I could have walked away from Hollywood, lived quietly somewhere. I'm not judging. I'm asking if you ever think about the roads not taken.
The poet Robert Frost wrote of roads diverging in a wood. But what of those who never saw a fork, only the path that survival demanded?
Every day. But those roads led to obscurity. We chose significance over safety.
Significance. I became significant for all the wrong reasons. My death overshadowed my life. Conspiracy theories, Kennedy connections, they turned my suicide into entertainment.
Monroe's death at 36 sparked decades of speculation. Found in her Brentwood home with empty pill bottles nearby, the official cause was listed as probable suicide, though conspiracy theories persist to this day.
At least your death remained mysterious. Mine became a romantic tableau. The beautiful queen with her asp, choosing love over life. They turned my final act of defiance into a love story.
But it wasn't about love, was it? Not really.
No, it was about control. The one choice they couldn't take from me. Though I suppose that's what they never tell you about power. It's mostly about the choices you're not allowed to make.
Both women died by their own hands. Yet how different are the narratives we've built around their final acts? One romanticised as tragic love, the other medicalised as mental illness.
The pills. They weren't supposed to kill me that night. I'd taken them before, so many times, just to quiet the noise in my head, to make Marilyn stop talking so Norma Jean could finally rest.
What was the noise?
Everyone wanting something. Studios wanting sexier, directors wanting simpler, men wanting available, women wanting unattainable. And underneath it all, this voice asking, "Who are you when no one's watching?"
I know that voice.
What did it say to you?
That I was an imposter. A Greek woman pretending to be an Egyptian goddess, speaking Latin to Roman men who would never see me as their equal. Even when I won, when Caesar declared Caesarion his heir, when Antony chose me over Octavia, part of me wondered if they loved Egypt's wealth more than Egypt's queen.
Cleopatra's Egypt was Rome's largest supplier of grain. Her alliance wasn't just romantic, it was economic survival for the Roman Empire, making her one of the most strategically valuable women in the ancient world.
At least your imposter syndrome came with actual power. Mine just came with prettier prisons.
You think being queen meant freedom? I couldn't eat without a food taster, couldn't travel without an army, couldn't love without considering treaties. Every relationship was a political alliance.
But people feared you, respected you. When you entered a room, armies followed. When I entered a room, men fantasized and women felt inadequate. Which of us really had power?
Both. Neither. You changed how the world saw beauty, femininity, sexuality. Generations of women compared themselves to your image.
That's not power. That's responsibility I never asked for.
And leading Egypt against Rome was responsibility I was born into. Neither of us chose our burdens, but we carried them.
Arthur Miller wrote of Monroe, "She was a poet on a street corner, trying to recite to a crowd, pulling at her clothes." Might the same be said of any woman trying to be heard above the din of others' expectations?
Do you think they were proud of us, our younger selves?
I think they would have been terrified of what we became. And perhaps proud that we survived as long as we did. We survived in ways that matter. Your image still empowers women to embrace their sexuality without shame. My story still inspires leaders to fight impossible odds.
Even if those weren't our intentions?
Especially because they weren't our intentions. We lived authentically enough that our truth transcended our performances.
I'm so tired of being a symbol. Even here, even now, talking to you, I can feel myself becoming a metaphor.
Then let's stop being metaphors for a moment. Tell me something true, something that has nothing to do with history or legacy or significance.
I love dogs. Had a little white poodle named Math, short for Mafia, because Sinatra gave him to me. When the world got too loud, I'd just sit with Math and exist. No performance required.
Perhaps our truest selves live in such unwitnessed moments. What would history look like if we remembered these fragments instead?
Those sound like the realest parts of us.
Perhaps that's what survives too. Not just the myths, but the moments when we forgot to be legendary.
Do you think anyone remembers those parts?
We've remembered them. And maybe that's enough.
Thank you for talking to me.
Thank you too.
In the end, perhaps legacy is less about the masks we wore than the moments we dared to remove them. Cleopatra and Marilyn Monroe, separated by 2 millennia, united by the particular loneliness of being both revered and misunderstood. They performed power so convincingly that history forgot they were human. But in this eternal library, away from the weight of crowns and cameras, they found something rarer than fame: recognition. 2 women who shaped the world's imagination, free to imagine themselves. You've been listening to History's Afterlife, a Sparky the Creative production.